So you,
What's that?
it says, so you tried the blindfold and you learned many things.
Yeah. So I learned a new way to brush my teeth. So instead of trying to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, you just put the toothpaste directly into your mouth. Much more efficient that way. What else? I learned how many steps it is from the door to my window without, getting hit. Uh, um, what else? Oh, I know that I can do a bunch of things blindfolded. I can cook myself dinner and go to the bathroom and learn. Yeah, so it was fun.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. An example of that is that uh, a hose that we kind of know where the outlet
Mm-hmm.
is, but then following the hose uh, to the end of it. So the same thing with a large faucet that you can find the faucet on the wall, and then you can figure out where. Uh, I suppose rummaging around in a refrigerator is an interesting thing to do.
I don't have much in my fridge, so that part was fairly uneventful. uh, yeah, I did screw up parts of my cooking though. I had beans all on the counter, and it looked like a child had had tried to cook something. Big
Hmm.
mess. I had to clean it up. Um,
Well, if you'd have kept the blindfold on, you'd have never seen the mess.
I felt it. Felt it with my fingers. Um, yeah, did some cleaning. Took out the trash out of my bathroom, and it was like 24/7 meditation. So
Hmm.
it was good. Um, I'll probably do it again next time I have a full day off. I work still, so I'm not able to do it, um, you know, continuously for days at a time. Um, so I can gladden my mind pretty consistently. Um, I had an insight, whatever. The first yesterday morning. I'm not sure where it fits in terms of the Eightfold Path,
Okay.
but it seems that in any moment I have a decision that I can either be dissatisfied or satisfied, and I'm not sure if that is right view or effort, or if that where that fits in.
Well, it's your choice.
Okay.
Um, there, there was a section out of a book that was published several years ago of stuff that Santikaro had put together about the Samuppada. And this is not the heartwood of the boat tree, um, but I've forgotten the name of it. But anyway, a part of that book got published on Lion's Roar. And that the article, then the name of the article was basically, comma, your choice.
Mm.
And that what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was emphasizing in that book or in that particular work is not the kind of karma that we automatically think of as um, deep in the past and perhaps going far into the future,
Right.
or something abstract. But he was using karma in the context of the sankara, but he spoke about it in the sense of um, karma, your choice. You either follow your karma or you can make new choices about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a binary switch.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike other things that take time to develop, slowly in the sense of now that COVID 19 is here, getting the economy moving is not going to be flipping the switch where they announce it on a particular day that the U.S. economy is back on again. That's what the bankers and politicians would really like to do,
Right.
the big money people, but it's not going to happen like that. It's going to happen in various locations, slowly lifting rules, people getting back to work. It's going to be a whole long process. But what we're talking about here is something that's a binary switch, and it can be thrown. Anytime you throw that switch, the light goes on or off. And the light switch off would then be going back to the comma. And that this comma is the comma that we've been playing out every day. Every day we're building new karma. When we follow the old habits, we're just deepening the habit that we have. But every time we remember that, hey, we can turn that light switch on.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to forgive the metaphors about blindfolded, but we don't have to live in the dark. We can really, really start seeing what's going on. That in a way we have been living blindfolded.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because we didn't know that we could flip that switch. However, that switch seems to have a spring in it somewhere. It's spring loaded, so that you have to hold the switch down sometimes, and even then, let your finger off, and 5 minutes later, it will flip back to the old way. And so, unlike the economy of growing gradually to get it back up, what this is basically every time you can remember. So, in that regard, all of our concepts about, I'll use the word personality
Mm-hmm.
because generally, when psychologists think about personality, they're talking about enduring psychological traits that an individual has over time.
Mm-hmm.
That personality or enduring trait, though, is in fact our destiny or our karma. And what we mean by destiny is that if you are in the habit of doing the same thing over and over and over again, then that's going to lead to a lifestyle that uh, is almost going to be your destiny. You're destined to do it like that.
Mm-hmm.
An example is he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. But the person or the personality or the karma is not destined to live down the sword. At any particular time, you can put it down. And then somehow it manages to get right back in the hand again, but we can keep
Mm-hmm.
putting
Mm-hmm.
it down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this is the way that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was talking about it. So when you made that statement, you were spot on, and it agrees completely with uh, the teaching of Anapanasati, with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa making a particular point out of it,
Mm-hmm.
that it's a choice. Either you go with karma or you come out of your karma.
Mm-hmm.
Or another way of saying it, you either continue developing and going down the road of that personality, which has a destiny. But the more choices you have to make, then the further you can stray away from that trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
or that destiny that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a real sense of the way, destiny doesn't exist, not really. What does is exist is persistent habits,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the idea of will then comes from. And I know that free will or destiny uh, has gotten a lot of attention over the centuries within the Christian context. Uh, but within the Buddhist context, we can see that yes, when we're living by karma, then we are living by a trajectory that they can call destiny or providence, or things are bound to happen, or the binding. Well, there's really no binding there. It's that things are just in the habit of staying together as if they were bound,
Mm-hmm.
that they're really not bound at all. And so we can make a choice. And the wiser we are, and the more we see, and the more we look, and the more we develop sensory awareness and body awareness, then that means we have more choices and can vary further and further from that personality.
Mm-hmm.
So, if uh, if if destiny, which is which is actually a way of saying it, is destiny is painful. Painful means that we're dissatisfied with it. We would like to have something better, but we are bound to or destined to live our lives in a certain way. Um, an example would someone that I have a dream, not that someday every big thing will happen, but someday I'll go do something. You call it a bucket list
Mm-hmm.
sometime. There's a movie about that where two old codgers finally went out and did what they wanted to do, but it took them their whole lives to get ready to go do it. Okay. Well, you don't have to do that. But we
Yeah.
have we have we have choices about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so uh but those choices in this regard goes against that old um personality that persists, or that old karma, or that old sankara. All of that stuff that comes out of our past determines what we're going to do now. And that persists along and along so that it kind of gives a trajectory for the future.
Mm-hmm.
But if we start making some new choices, if we start waking up, if we start going against that, then that takes some development and some new skills. So the skill development is putting in right effort or doing an investment. So in that way, we can look at destiny versus free will. No, there is no such thing as free will, because you can't make those changes that quick and say, okay, I flipped that light switch one time, and now we've got light. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to work like that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we have to keep switching that. We keep having to make those choices over and over and over again. But by doing so, um, we put that investment in, and so in that regard, we don't have uh, free will, but we do have expensive will. And the expense that we take is keep flipping that switch, keep
Mm-hmm.
remembering that we're not stuck, that we're not bound to live in a certain way, and that uh, part of the choice then that we have is the waking up process that the Four Noble Truths is really all about. That's what the name Buddha uh, comes from, or the word Bo or Bud or uh, that kind of word actually just means to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And that Buddha was using it then as an analogy for that most people are asleep, even though they are in fact awake. but they're not awake enough to recognize that they have choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so the waking up process is the waking up to having choices. And one of the important ways of looking at choices is to start recognizing what kind of baggage, emotional baggage that we carry around so
Mm-hmm.
that we can let some of that stuff go. Um, One of the things that's kind of surprising that I have seen over time and other people talk about too is that um, sometimes a big event will happen, and that big event then causes a big insight. It was like, oh wow, look at what I've been doing,
Mm-hmm.
and that strong insight will build up a determination so that we become determined. I'm not going to do that anymore. And it seems like that in those kind of cases, you can flip that light switch and it stays flipped.
Mm-hmm.
But it, but really, what's going on is that every time any situation like that comes up, we automatically switch that light switch. We're on that one. Okay, so this is basically what we mean by the word insight. Uh, but if you look at the word insight, that when you look at it like that, or looking within and seeing, that's different than the kind of insight that most people think about insight, which is best seen in cartoons as a light bulb going off. And it's like something really major clicks or gets put together that doesn't even need language. That the concept of that insight, it may take us 5 minutes to describe
Mm-hmm.
it in words,
Mm-hmm.
but when the insight happened, it was like that light got turned on. And now all we're doing is describing what we see when
Right.
that light came. Okay, so that this happens a lot, and that um, though the kinds of things that you were talking about with the toothpaste, uh, and that those are those are little insights, but sometimes we get really big ones.
Mm-hmm.
And we begin to change. We change our bathroom habits. We begin to change all kinds of little things so that we develop a new system of habits, but then we still have control of those, so that over time the personality actually changes.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the really good reasons, another good reason to not ruminate or think about the past.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because when we think about the past, or that story of Santana or the old time, it was not you who did that. That was the old you, or the personality that you had at that time. So if you reflect back 10 or 15 years about something that happened that's embarrassing to you, it's best not to have those thoughts. But if you do, come out of them quickly with the thought, aha, I see that. I am not that old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so we begin to spend more of our time then directly into the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way that we flip that switch. Boy, when you're going around the house blindfolded, are you in the moment? Exactly. You're really there. Uh, uh, and uh, this is a very good practice
Mm-hmm.
because to remember to be here now actually is very much heightened without the sense of sight.
Mm-hmm.
That many things we see uh, just in a glance, a tiny glance, will be enough to guide our behavior. For instance, the dog is only out of the corner of my eye while I'm sitting here talking to you, but she's come up, and that changed my behavior because now I'm reaching out to pet her, and now she's going to come close enough to get petted. You
Mm-hmm.
see, so the eyes are like that. But when we're blindfolded, I would have known the dog was there anyway because she would have touched me slightly. You see, dogs are very, very kinesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And that oftentimes I see these dogs operate together. Uh, they crave touch. They're not nearly as visual as we are.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, this is really old new information that I have, I think, from school someplace. The dogs really don't see very well. A lot of animals don't. But that's one of the gifts that humans have developed is that we have better eyesight as a species than many others. Uh, though we see differently, but other animals have really acute eyesight. Barn owl is known to have excellent eyesight. Eagles, and even though the physical eye is smaller than the human eye, they can
Mm-hmm.
see things at great distance, tiny movements at great distance that we can't see. But the dog, no, sorry, they don't have that. They don't have all of the rods and cones that we have. The physical eye of the dog is such that their night vision is not good. And yet dogs are out at night a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Where cats have very good night vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so the old habit is put the cat out and bring the dog in. So that's possibly because of that. So this whole quality of eyesight is what the humans have done is that we have sort of become that's our primary input device.
Mm-hmm.
So by doing the blindfolding technique, now you're beginning to say, oh, wait a minute, look how much I have been relying on just one input device,
Mm-hmm.
where I've got all this other stuff, all of this tactile, and putting things together and starting using my hands. Uh, for instance, cooking, you actually were seeing the sights of what your hands were doing in your mind. That
Yes.
you
Yeah.
created a site in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think the example that I have for myself most is working on a motorbike or a car where you cannot see what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
All you can do is get a hand up there. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that hand, you have to understand that the hand is actually now seeing in a way
Mm-hmm.
that we hadn't thought of before. Um, if you think about pixelization, you know what I mean by pixelization?
Yeah, when an image, the resolution becomes significantly lower, and so it's just
Okay,
pixels.
but in this regard, we're taking an analog, or let us say silver nitrate on a plate,
Mm-hmm.
which is an analog, and we're digitizing it. So the visual images that we have are digitalized in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of putting pixels in place. On the cell phone, there's literally millions. On the screen of well, a laptop is like 1,000 by 768, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
1024. Okay, so uh, but we can get a lot of information with a whole lot fewer pixels. And so what they've actually worked with, and I think this is much more sophisticated now than it was when I was looking at these things, was taking a matrix of, let us say, isolated cells, individual diodes, if it will, so that these things heat up just 1 or 2 or 3 degrees in a short time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put it in a matrix on the back of a blind person so that a camera can be attached, bring it down from the pixel power of the camera down to just the number of pixels that they have on the human back. And then this tactile sensation from all over these various places in the back allows the individual to learn to see
Mm.
so that he can navigate things without having to have a cane. It's
Mm-hmm.
not really good. I mean, you can't recognize faces across the street, but you
Right.
can recognize where the across the street is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, if you think about it like that, that means that this mental imagery that this blind man through this mechanism is painting as a visual image that's inside the mind,
Mm-hmm.
that's the Salayatana. That's what we actually see. What the eyes are doing is just merely feeding information in to create that Salayatana almost in a pixelized format, just the same way that these pixels can be done on the back of a human being
Oh,
that is
interesting.
actually blind. But we can also do that with the hand.
Right. It's very interesting. I never thought of it that way.
Okay. That gives you a really clear understanding now about how different the Atana is from the Salayatana. That in fact, sometimes, not sometimes, often, that people will give a concept, they're talking and speaking about something, and that um, the listener then will create a mental image
Mm-hmm.
so that he understands. But if you've got a sophisticated professor that's writing on the blackboard, doing mathematical kinds of things or something, then his visual imagery is far superior to the student because he's already seen it many times. He knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, seeing it visually like that, but we could actually speak of it in the sense of algebra. And so just pay close attention to the visual imagery that I'm talking about when I'm talking about how to get the area of a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now the triangle, if you fold it over and double it, it's going to become a rectangle
Mm-hmm.
because the heights and the base now are at the bottom and the top. Now look, I'm already doing this and I'm creating visual images for you.
I
Okay.
see it in my mind. Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly so. So now we're going to start when you're going around uh, blindfolded around the house. What you're actually doing is bringing up the constructed memory of the visions of the house that you've already seen, that you
Mm-hmm.
already know what the house looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can easily kind of feel your way around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a sort of a major change in the way that we do things so that we begin to really see how the mind actually works.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gaining great insight into stuff, but you haven't put it to verbalization yet, other than putting toothpaste directly on the teeth. But you can see um, that there are many shortcuts. Here's an example of that. Why did you ever put toothpaste on a toothbrush?
I guess I could have used my finger, but I think the toothbrush, it's an electric one. I think it's more effective.
Oh, no, what I'm getting at is you probably saw an advertisement on television of the manufacturer of the toothpaste paste putting their toothpaste on a toothbrush.
Right, yeah.
They don't show you an image of somebody taking the toothpaste and putting it right in their mouth and squeezing it.
Right. Yeah. That's why I did it originally. Is
Uh-huh.
probably either a commercial or my parents taught me.
Hmm. Now, that's what we're calling karma.
Hmm.
That's the karma. You learn to do it one way.
I also noticed that when walking into different rooms, that I my hand would it, instinctively just go to the light switch. It is like I don't need the light switch on.
Yes. So that's another thing is look how much of our um, life is put on automatic pilot.
Right. Yeah.
Even turning the lights on in a room because you're in the habit of turning the lights on when you go into the room, and here you are blindfolded. Didn't you?
Right.
Ah, wakey, wakey!
Yeah.
look, look at what you're doing. This is in fact the sum total of all of the teachings of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa can be summed up in that one little phrase of, look at what you're doing. And in fact, I think that was why he got such a kick out of it. When I really first met him, I hadn't even become a monk yet, but we were talking about practice and meditation, and I used the phrase, and this is so important because everybody does that. And I use the phrase that I've heard many times: when at first you don't succeed, try again.
Mm-hmm.
And that almost has that built into it of never mind, start again. Okay. And Bhikkhu Buddhadasa said, no. If at first you succeed, don't keep trying and trying. That's just building old karma, he explained. But really, if you first succeed, look at what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that blindfold now, that's actually causing you to really look at what you're doing at a level that's really crazy because we got the lights off
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
or we're not looking. So this look at what we're doing means more than just with the eyes.
So I've noticed I have some doubt about correct practice in this respect. So when I'm taking the long breath, I've been noticing that about midway through the exhalation, I get these pleasant sensations that appear inside my head. And so, but I'm also noticing that in order to take that sort of long breath, that my body starts to tense up a bit. And so I'm not sure how to navigate that, because on the one hand, I'm thinking, okay, I'm supposed to be calming the body. And on the other hand, I'm supposed to be uh, becoming sensitive to pleasure. Um, so kind of like I'm juggling that.
It's an interesting phrase that you said about looking for pleasure. Because whenever we're looking for something, that's a form of restlessness, and we're not really at peace.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than looking at it as, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that,
Mm-hmm.
we can begin to look at them in the relationship of perhaps a cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the outcome of finding the joy and the pleasure and the satisfaction will now bring on the state of peace. So rather than trying to develop peace directly, that's another point about the way Anapanasati is described in the order that it's described because it's in the body, that calming the body and calming the body's function requires other stages of Anapanasati. Yet most people, and Bhikkhu Buddhadasa even talked about that the old standard way of practicing Anapanasati was you do step 1 and then step 2 and then step 3 and then step 4 and then step 5 and then step 6, but you will never get step 4 done unless you've already got step 9 and 10 and 5 and 6, that in fact step 4 of Anapanasati, the actual calming of the body,
Mm-hmm.
has to have the conditions taken away that are actually causing the lack of peacefulness. And so that's why Anapanasati is not really best practiced when it's tried to be practiced in the order of appearance.
Okay.
It's sort of like in a movie. Many movies will have their cast in order of appearance. So the first person you saw would be the first item or the first guy on the list. And
Right.
yet, in reality, sometimes the first guy uh, that you see in a movie, you never see him again after 1 or 2 minutes, and then the whole rest of the movie is about something else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the kind of issue that we're dealing with here. So that calming that you're asking about is actually going to be the result or the effect of the cause of having the calmness. Excuse me, not the calmness of the satisfaction.
Okay.
Okay, now let's actually look at that step six of anapanasati. That state of in the anapanasati sutta, it is only just one or two words, and that is uh, the word sukha. That you develop sukha. Now, in another part of the anapanasati sutta, he is talking about that you will actually develop the four um, bases of power. And the development of the four bases of power are, in fact, those items that are on the Eightfold Noble Path. In other words, mindfulness or sati is
Mm-hmm.
one of the bases of power. Investigation is another basis of power. Um, that um, right effort is the basis of power. But now let's look at not the base of power, but actually the power itself. And
Mm-hmm.
so this word that we're talking about is idiopata. Um, idiopata, the word idia, is the same word in Sanskrit as siddhi, and generally within the context of the Buddhist religion and um, let us say the old religions of India, including modern day Hinduism. The cities are the magical powers of like floating in the air, diving in
Right.
the earth,
Mm-hmm.
walking on water, clairaudience, clairvoyance, this kind of stuff. Uh, but the original definition of the word city or idia is the way that the Buddha is using it, defining it as it revolves around satisfaction, but it defines it as first off success and satisfaction. It also talks about security and well-being, um, and so these are actually the powers. But then, possibly the most important one on the list corresponds to the English language word of wealth. Um, but we're not talking about wealth in the sense of money, but wealth in the sense of the power overflows. We're wealthy with the power of this satisfaction and security. So if you in fact have good security, you feel really, really wealthy and everything, and I mean it's just things are so nice.
Yeah.
That's when we can finally go into that state of peace.
Mm-hmm.
That state of passivity doesn't happen, or that place of no place to go and nothing to do requires some skill. Get it all ready so that there's
Mm-hmm.
no place to go and nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when that peace comes in, uh, and that peace um, actually it's it's in it's in each of the tetrads of Anapanasati. In the corresponding way of in the body, they talk about tranquilizing the body or stilling the body's function or bringing that about. But we also have that um, in the Vedana section or of the feelings, where um, we're. Hang on a second. Somebody's calling. Hmm. Oh, here he is. I want to turn him on. I'm on the call.
Okay.
Okay. So back back to um, idiopata. When we have this, it affects the body, it affects the feelings, and that in this regard of affecting the feelings, it actually begins to integrate. So that step 8 of Anapanasati, which I don't talk very much about, is actually the integration of the feelings and the mind. And the way that it talks about it is that feelings are the mind conditioner. Begin to see how the mind, the feelings and the thoughts interplay and interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
But then um, in the mental part, step 11 and 12 of Anapanasati then is talking about liberating the mind, which that liberation is the same thing as calming the body down. Now we're liberating the mind also, which has that freedom quality. Um, that when you have no freedom, you're struggling for freedom. But once you've got freedom, nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step, the 12, is um, it's called integrating the mind or integrating all of it together, the integration. So through the liberation comes the samadhi, which is wrongly translated as um, concentrating the mind,
Mm-hmm.
but because basically what the word samadhi, it doesn't mean concentration in the sense of throwing things out that don't belong, like water in concentrated orange juice or concentrated milk by taking stuff out of it. Rather, we're talking about it in the sense of unification,
Mm-hmm.
of bringing the mind together as a whole. And when the mind is at one or at peace, then the body and the feelings can also be at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so these things work together. And so this is kind of a long, long answer to your question
Mm-hmm.
about do I go for developing peace or do I go
Mm-hmm.
for developing joy? The
Mm-hmm.
answer is joy is a skill that should be developed, and peace will be the result.
Okay. Great. All right, so I guess I'll just keep breathing in that sort of fashion that keeps making. I'm not sure what's happening. Sometimes it's like this crinkly sound, and at one point in time it started clicking, um, which which yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but it's nice. So I
Well,
guess I'll keep doing it.
okay. If it happens often, use it as an something to observe, something to look at, something
Okay.
to inspect.
All right. I'll do that.
Because you're going well, David. I congratulate you. You're making great progress.
Okay.
Thanks for staying
Thank
with it.
you. Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, that's part of, by the way, of right effort is we have to keep doing it.
Hmm.
Never mind, start again. Well, I
Hmm.
haven't meditated in a year now. Never mind, start again.
Hmm.
It's always that simple. It really is down to just flipping a switch, and all we have to do is remember to flip the switch. That's just
Hmm.
basically what it is. Just keep switch flipping.
Hmm.
Maybe that could be the title of a book. Dharma, the art of switch flipping.
Yeah. Maybe.
All right, David. Well, we'll see you in a couple of days then.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Thank you.
Okay, see you.
Bye bye.